good afternoon, and thanks for watching us here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. My name's Eugene Daniel, joined by producer Nia Campbell over the way. There she waves to the camera. You know, typically I'm saying good morning for Live Impact News because I am doing it from 10 to 12. A little different as I am sitting in pinch hitting for Connor Reel today, who is off. We are going through a few different things that are happening right now. Monitoring, obviously, we're looking at the latest of the trial down in Texas with Uvalde that is taking place. The former police officer there accused of not doing enough in order to prevent and stop a gunman who ultimately killed 19 children and 2 adults, 2 teachers on that day. But also right now we are monitoring a situation in Norfolk where we have Brittany Miller, who is on the scene there right now, where police and a forensic unit appears to still be there. This right behind our studio here at 13 News Now. Brittany, if you can hear me, set the scene for me at this point. What are you seeing, and what do we know about this particular circumstance from police?
Well, Eugene, in the last 30 minutes, a couple of things, a couple of new things developing. First, what we believe is a coroner showed up, an unmarked white van pulled up to the scene, and they are now backed into the area where police have been focusing their attention. And within the last 10 minutes or so, several NCIS police, that's going to be the Naval Police, got here to the scene. 3 women. They're now talking with police inside of the scene. Authorities have been out here for hours. All this started at about 9:45 this morning. As Eugene said, we're within walking distance of the 13 News Now newsroom. One of our coworkers spotted this scene when it was still very small, just 2 officers on the scene, some yellow tape very far back, close to the water. When we got here right before 10:30, we checked in with those 2 officers, asked if they could share any information with us. They weren't able to tell us anything, but when we backed off to go ahead and put up some or start getting some video, they started putting up all this yellow tape that you see here, blocking off all of the entrances to this scene. Shortly after that, the forensics unit pulled up. Minutes after that, detectives started arriving to the scene. I think I counted about 3 detectives at one point. This is a very active area back here. A lot of cars driving around, a lot of neighbors walking their dogs. People have been stopping, many people stopping to ask us what's going on. We've seen detectives and forensic agents going in and out of this apartment building. We're right next door to the at Front Street. We've seen leasing agents come out. We've seen detectives go in and speak with the leasing agents. So it's just a very active scene, really, despite there not being, the flashing lights and things that you may be used to seeing at scenes. It is still very active. It is clearly a very developing situation.
And Brittany, tell me, how long have you been there on the scene at this point, and has it essentially been the same kind of activity, or have you kind of seen it grow here since you've been there?
Here, right before 10:30, right around 10:22, looked at the clock around the time we were arriving, and the scene has definitely been growing throughout the morning. As I said, it started with just those 2 police officers at first. Their cars were further back, closer to where the police have been focusing their attention, and it's been consistently growing since then. I think I saw 1 detective leave the scene, but for the most part, it's just been a pretty steady stream of people arriving here. As I said, within the last 10-15 minutes, we had 2 NCIS agents, NCIS police get here, and then another woman came a few minutes after them. So the scene has been steadily growing as the morning has progressed. It's now after 1 o'clock, and Norfolk police tell us that they first got here at 9:45. So they've been here for hours. We've also been here for hours watching as this investigation progresses.
Certainly interesting, and I do believe, as you were talking about earlier, there to our left, your right behind you is an apartment building, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so we have the field there to, again, our right, your left. But unclear at this point, as you've been reporting, exactly what led to this death. But you'll be out there reporting for us. As soon as we get some new information, I'm sure we'll hear from you, if not on this platform, on air and online here at 13 News Now. So, Brittany, we appreciate you, and best of luck as you're out there.
Thanks, Eugene.
Okay, that is Brittany Miller. Again, that is literally like a stone's throw away from where we are in our studios right here in Norfolk for 13 News Now, right behind our building. And so one of our colleagues was able to spot the initial stages of them putting up that tape and then some of the crews arriving. And then we literally just went into our backyard there, as you heard Brittany reporting, still trying to figure out exactly what happened, and a medical examiner is likely going to get involved in all of that, and which will guide the police and the investigators, their case moving forward. Okay, I'm looking here now. I think this is still here in Norfolk. Is this the moment, Naya, in which we're seeing some of those crews finally leaving from the area? It looks like.
Yes.
Okay, and so you heard from Brittany say that they had been there for several hours. I think the original call came in around 9:45. And that included a forensics unit that was there on the scene. I'm not quite sure if either of those vehicles are connected to forensics. The police department, I couldn't get a really clear view of, as I'm looking at them still on here, of what was on the side of those vehicles. So not quite sure at this point, but we are seeing some of the crews apparently beginning to leave from that general area. Okay, so I'm glad we were able to get to that. And now let's go ahead and turn to our forecast. We got meteorologist Hunter Forrest, who is with us right now. And Hunter, you know, the big word that we've been kind of tossing out there these last few days as we get closer to the weekend, snow, and the possibility for snow to happen here in Hampton Roads. I know there were a few models you guys have been telling us that look different. So are things starting to come together? Are we still looking at the potential for some flurries?
You know, it's not looking like a major snowstorm for the area. I know some people may be happy or sad about that. But it's looking, you know, we could see a few flurries, maybe a dusting in a few areas. Right now the models aren't really, they're more coming together, saying that we could see, you know, maybe a 1/10 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch in a few areas. It's not looking like we're going to see a lot more than that, but right now it's looking like we're going to start off with some rain as we head into Sunday afternoon, and then as some cold air filters on in, we'll see some transition on over to a wintry mix and some snow. So I can time this out for you here as we go through, you know, this evening. So we stay nice and clear, and for Saturday, it's a nice start to the day. You know, we're in the mid-30s. Clear skies, a chance for an isolated shower heading into the afternoon, especially for the northern areas. But overall, a pretty nice start to the weekend. And then by Saturday evening, we're in the mid to low 40s. And then by Sunday morning, this is the graph model here, saying we could see some rain showers moving in Sunday morning. And then a lot of that starts to push offshore by mid to late morning, and it stays down around eastern North Carolina and the Outer Banks. So this is 1 o'clock. Most of us are dry except for, you know, the Outer Banks and around the Admiral Sound. And then we see a bit of a transition to some snow heading into the late afternoon and evening from Cape Charles down around Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Elizabeth City, and Hertford. But you'll notice temperatures are still above freezing. So if it does start to snow, it may be hard for it to stick. Certainly could on some elevated surfaces, but it's not looking like we're going to see a whole bunch. But you could certainly see some flurries going around there, some snow showers heading into the late afternoon and evening, and then it pushes out and we clear out heading into Sunday night. Here's a look at some of those snowfall potentials. Not a whole lot. 1/10 of an inch to 2/10 of an inch from Norfolk down to Virginia Beach, Elizabeth City. And if we take a look at the GFS and the Euro, in similar agreements, the Euro having a little bit more, close to a 1/2 an inch around Norfolk and Chesapeake, but that's really about it. And the GFS model has really come down over the last model runs. Yesterday morning, at one point, it was saying 5 to 7 inches in a few areas. But obviously, that is not the case anymore. And it's a good thing that at least 3 of these models are in pretty good agreement. The GFS, the Euro, and the graph saying, you know, a 1/10 of an inch to maybe a 1/2 an inch around the area. So not expecting anything major, nothing to cancel your plans over, but it could just become more of a nuisance if you were planning on being outdoors that day.
So, Hunter, I'm going to pause you just real quick because we're going to get back to, I got some questions about this. I just want to catch the president right now before he gets on board this plane. This is the president departing for Palm Beach, Florida. This after he held a roundtable discussion today on a GOP healthcare plan. So it appears that he is speaking to reporters at the moment. Let's see what he has to say.
Their own health care. They'll get much better health care at a much reduced cost.
Pull out of NATO if it doesn't help you acquire Greenland. If it doesn't leave
Well, we're going to see. NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security, especially when it comes to what we're doing in terms of the Golden Dome and all of the other things. We have a lot of investments in military. We have got the strongest military in the world, and it's only getting stronger. And you saw that with Venezuela. You saw that with the attack on Iran, with the knocking out their nuclear capability potentially. So, yeah, we're talking to NATO.
President Trump.
I don't talk about that. Well, we're going to see. As you know, Iran canceled the hanging of over 800 people. They were going to hang over 800 people yesterday, and I greatly respect the fact that they canceled that.
Prime Minister Carney is in China. And how do you see the deals Canada and China have just signed, trade deals between the two partners?
Well, that's okay. That's what he should be doing. I mean, it's a good thing for him to sign a trade deal. If you can get a deal with China, you should do that.
Election in Venezuela.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
Yesterday you accepted Maria Machado's Nobel Prize medal. What do you intend to do with it? And why would you want someone else's Nobel Prize?
Well, she offered it to me. I thought it was very nice. She said, you know, you've ended 8 wars, and nobody deserves this prize more than in history than you do. And I thought it was a very nice gesture. And by the way, I think she's a very fine woman, and we'll be talking again.
You intend to keep that, sir?
Say it. Well, the Insurrection Act, which has been used by 48% of the presidents as of this moment, the Insurrection Act also, if you look at it, I believe it was Bush, the elder Bush, he used it, I think, 28 times. It's been used a lot. And if I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now to use it. But if I needed it, I'd use it. It's very powerful. Well, if you ever remember a place called Iraq where everybody was fired, every single person, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and they ended up being ISIS. Instead of just getting down to business, they ended up being ISIS. So I remember that. But I'll tell you, I had a great meeting yesterday by a person who I have a lot of respect for, and she has respect, obviously, for me and our country. And she gave me her Nobel Prize. But I'll tell you what, I got to know her. I never met her before, and I was very, very impressed. She's a really, this is a fine woman.
Where are you going? March for Life is next week.
Yes.
And some pro-lifers are worried about this report for the Hyde Amendment. What do you tell them?
Well, you know what I tell them? You're going to hear about it because I just taped a beautiful piece for them, and they're going to play it. And those are great people. I want to tell you, they're great people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
And there you have it. That's the president as he is leaving from the White House there to Palm Beach, Florida. Again, this comes after he held a roundtable discussion earlier today on a health care plan. You heard him speak about that, a part of it, and what he is calling the Great Health Care Plan. He says he wants to lower drug prices, lower insurance premiums, hold big companies accountable, and maximize price transparency. Also wants to codify discounts on prescription drugs. It's already received criticism from Democrats who basically say, okay, these are great goals. However, there's no specifics to that plan in which the president has listed out. And the other thing that we heard out of that meeting, and some of the reporters, I believe, asked him in regards to Greenland. The president said earlier that he may put tariffs on other countries if they don't go along with what the U.S. Has envisioned for Greenland, because we need Greenland. Now, that obviously is probably going to put more emphasis on the conversations that have continued to grow out of the U.S. With our involvement or desired involvement with Greenland, which is already a part of Denmark and has received a lot of pushback from not only leaders in Denmark, but across the world, particularly NATO. And even here, bipartisan leaders have expressed concerns about some of the comments that they have heard from this administration regarding desire to do things in Greenland. So a lot of conversation to still come forward through that. But let's go now back to Hunter. Bring him on in. You know, speaking of Greenland, I know a lot of ice and snow is in that particular country. And here we are. We were just talking about snow chances here. Obviously not as much as we're seeing out there. But we were just talking about it. You were listing that out. I guess the big question for a lot of people who are going to be heading up to the inauguration as well this weekend, tomorrow for Abigail Spanberger, will they run into potentially any kind of wintry, icy conditions there or coming back?
No, luckily on Inauguration Day, I have a graphic here for it. For up in Richmond, things should be looking pretty good. I mean, if you're heading out early from here, we'll be again into the mid-30s, but up in Richmond, similar conditions. A chance for an isolated shower between 10 and 11 o'clock up there, but overall, it should be pretty good for the middle of January. Their high will be in the upper 40s to right around 50 degrees. It will be slightly breezy, so it'll be feeling more like the mid 40s for most of the afternoon and upper 20s in the morning. But overall, it should be a pretty good Inauguration Day. It could be much colder for them, especially, since it's outdoors. But the weather should cooperate pretty well for January up in Richmond. So great travel weather. Yeah, I mean, even if you're heading back Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, you may run into a few rain or snow showers here. But up there should be staying.
Okay. Well, that's good for our folks who are heading up there. Hampton Roads is going to play a big part in that inauguration ceremony and all of the festivities around it. In a few minutes, we'll actually hear about that. We have our own Janet Roach, who is live in Richmond. She's going to be there today and tomorrow covering the historic event, along with Layla Cox, who will be reporting from Richmond also. But before we even get into all of that, into our next thing, though, Hunter, I got to say, it's your night to shine because tonight you want to get your tickets to go to the Norfolk Scope to see not only Hunter, but our entire 13 News Now team of meteorologists as they are going to be participating with STEM Night with the Norfolk Admirals. I hear, Hunter, I don't know, I heard you're going to be putting on a uniform, putting on some skates. I heard you're going to be hitting the puck in there. I heard you're going to be doing all that. And then, was it the Zamboni? You're going to be driving that? I heard you doing all of that.
I wish. That would be pretty. I would definitely put on some skates.
Yeah.
I love ice skating.
A Connecticut boy.
A Connecticut boy. It's been a minute, but I think I could get back out there.
Yeah, I think
so. Hit a few pucks.
Yeah. We just got to see it now.
But I think Craig is hitting the puck.
Oh, okay.
And Taylor and Evan are riding the Zamboni.
So where does that leave you?
And then Tim is doing Are You Smarter Than a Meteorologist?
Okay. And Hunter's doing?
And I'm doing... We'll see.
Whatever is left.
I might be able to get the interceptors going out there on the ice.
Okay, yes.
So I think I might be able to squeeze in there and throw some shirts.
Okay, just make sure when you throw that you get a really good base. You stand on not the ice. All right, we don't want you to fall and get hurt, but you really get some twerk. It's all in the hips. You got to do full motion because
So twerk on the ice. Okay.
yes,
It's a dancing show as well.
it is a dancing competition. Oh, Hunter, twerking on the ice. That is great in context. Just, make sure you try to get, if you are throwing anything, because it's always the people in the front row who get it.
Right.
You just
No,
wanna-
I get that.
You know what I'm saying? That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Use the full
I'm
body
going to
motion.
use some force.
Yes, Hunter force. You know what I mean? That's what we're
was good.
doing. All right. Well, that's a great opportunity. I have my tickets. Now you got your tickets?
I do got my ticket.
Okay, just
Oh.
making
So I
sure.
will
If you
be
didn't, I
there.
have an extra. I have an extra for you. So that's tonight. Puck drops at 7:05. Hunter, go ahead and get up out of here, man. We appreciate you as always.
Thank you, guys. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure.
Now, the pleasure will be ours tonight watching you guys do whatever's going to happen on the ice.
I will be doing a live shot at 4.
Oh, okay.
So I'll see you then as well.
You will see me because I'll be at the desk.
I know. I heard that.
I know, man.
What a pleasant surprise.
Things are changing.
Wow. You love to see it.
You love to see it. All right, so I will see you next at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock
See
on
you
the air.
then.
Be there. Be
See
there.
you on the ice.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll transition to something a bit more serious here. This is out of Texas right now. That trial is continuing as the prosecution is moving forward with testimony in the case against former Uvalde school police officer Adrian Gonzalez. He faces multiple charges, about 24 or so, basically accused of not doing enough there to respond to that deadly mass shooting at Robb Elementary School a few years ago. So let's go ahead and go straight to the courtroom. This has been going on for the last several days, and today, since about 10 o'clock this morning. Let's listen in to where they are right now. This should be it may be from the prosecution, so let's see.
Somebody's claiming that Adrian shows up on the scene, dealing with everything, and the shooter's in the building, right?
What about that time?
Well, he shows up to the
Correct.
scene. He's dealing with someone frantic. He hears gunshots because 14 seconds later he says, shots fired, right?
Right.
He's trying to observe and orient himself, and then maybe he's getting shot at. He doesn't know where this fire is coming from, correct?
Correct.
And 1 minute and 4 seconds later, the shooter's in the building. Right?
Yes.
And once the shooter's in the building, Adrian doesn't know when he went into the building. There's no evidence that shows that, right?
Correct.
Because he's on the southeast side and there's no line of sight, correct?
Correct.
He had no idea that he had entered the building at 11:32:59, right?
There was some radio transmission, I believe, by Sergeant Coronado saying that he may have made it inside the building, but
That wasn't Coronado,
there was somebody that had radio transmission.
but it wasn't Coronado, right?
I can't say for certain.
But you just tried to tell the jury that it was Coronado, but it wasn't Coronado, right?
There was transmission shortly after
After
the
what?
shooter entered through the west door.
Yeah, so shortly after is 11:32:59. Will you look at your critical timeline and tell me what that is?
This is when Officer Gonzalez says going to be on the west side of the school, by those vehicles. Supposed to be wearing all black.
What does supposed to mean to you? So when someone says supposed to be doing something, it indicates that they didn't see, they're being told something. So supposedly this is what's happening, right?
And that's possible.
In general. And so he says supposed to be wearing black. So by the time Adrian shows up on the scene, is dealing with a frantic witness, and there's nothing, Miss Flores, I'm not criticizing her at all. She's got a lot going on. She told kids to go back inside. She's fallen. She thinks she's being shot at. She's hearing sounds. There's echoing, right? He's dealing with her. He finally gets oriented. He reports at 11:32:09, shots fired, right? That's from Adrian Gonzalez.
Correct.
Okay, so he's there. He's got to get out of his vehicle. He sees a potential victim. He doesn't know. He thought it was the suspect as he drove into it because he took action. And he takes more action by getting out of his vehicle. He didn't stay in his vehicle, right?
Based on what you're telling me in his interaction with Miss Flores, yes, he didn't stay in his vehicle.
I appreciate you trusting me, I really do. But based off of your interview, based off of your investigation, you know he got out of his vehicle.
I didn't conduct an interview, but yes, he did get out of his vehicle.
But you did do an investigation, right?
I participated in the investigation, yes.
But that participation has a critical timeline that everybody's depending on, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so you know he got, so that takes more action to get out of your vehicle, right?
Yes.
And then if there's shooting going on, do you have a better chance or a worse chance of surviving if you get out of your vehicle?
You have a better chance if you get out of your vehicle.
Get out of the vehicle or stay in your vehicle and try to hide and not be seen to get shot?
As me being a police officer, I would not want to stay in my vehicle.
Tactically, right? You'd either get behind the engine block or you'd run.
Or find some other cover or go
I got it.
to the threat.
Right, but you don't get out of the vehicle and subject yourself maybe just to stand around and pace, right? You wouldn't be pacing back and forth.
I would not.
Okay. And so all I'm saying is he gets there, he says shots fired 14 seconds later because he hears them himself, right? And he wants to relay, part of your training is to communicate to other officers to let them know, hey, there's shots fired, heads up, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then between here and here, a minute, give a different color. Thank you. So from here to here is a minute and 4 seconds, right?
From the 11:31:55 to the 11:30
to 58.
59. Yeah.
58.
Yes.
Right? That's a minute and 4 seconds. At 11:32:59, Adrian, after getting information from the witness, listening, because he never saw the shooter, but he's listening to things, he's giving an approximation, he's making educated guess to notify other officers, west side of the building, west side of the...
Testifying, this is not asking a question, John.
He's relaying information, Judge, I'm just trying to...
Okay, saying what...
Go ahead and ask the question, please.
Okay. He transmitted, I can say transmitted, Adrian transmitted information to everybody on the radio, correct?
Yes.
And part of that transmission is, he says, supposed to be wearing black, correct?
Yes.
And that was a second after the shooter had made it in the building, correct?
Yes.
And that's consistent with someone who has never seen this shooter. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that,
Yeah,
yes.
and so he obviously had no idea when this person entered the building. So he's relaying the information as soon as he's gathering it, he's relaying the information, correct?
Yes.
But the shooter's already in the building.
At that time, yes.
And the time that he shows up at the scene to the time the shooter gets into the building is 1 minute and 4 seconds, right?
Through the west door, yes.
Okay. And then once he makes it in that building, 20 seconds later, he's assaulting those children.
Objecting misstatement of the facts, Your Honor. It was 45 seconds he testified.
Okay, I'll make it real easy, Judge, if you will.
Well, I need to repeat it. The objection is overruled. Rely on your own recollection, ladies and gentlemen. Proceed.
Okay. Does someone have to enter a room to assault somebody with a weapon?
No.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So do you mind if I use an example, you and I or if I'm shooting at you hypothetically?
Please.
Okay. If this is a door in front of you, and I'm standing outside that door, and I have a weapon, and I'll still aim down, and I'm shooting at you with this weapon through the door, am I assaulting you?
Yes.
So the assault's happened 22 seconds later, right? You can look at your timeline.
From the hallway, yes.
Yes, sir. From when he enters the building at 11:32:58, in 20 more seconds, he goes down to 112 and he starts shooting that door. 22 seconds, I think it is.
Do you want me to calculate that for you, or?
No, you don't need to do it for me, but do it for the jury, please.
So yes, approximately 22 seconds.
Okay, that's what I said, 22 seconds. So 22 seconds later, he walks to 112 and just starts shooting through the door, so he's assaulting those children in those rooms.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I meant. And so all of that is calculated, and so we're trying to analyze and hold Adrian responsible for a minute and 4 seconds plus 22 seconds, right?
There's additional time to consider.
I got it, but essentially I'm talking about when he gets into the building, which he didn't know it happened, to when he starts assaulting those children. It's a minute and 26 seconds.
From the time he starts shooting into the classrooms.
From getting into the building to shooting the classrooms, it's 1 minute and 22 seconds. I'm sorry, from when he gets there, from Adrian gets on the scene to him shooting the classrooms, it's 1 minute and 26 seconds.
To starting to shoot in the classrooms,
Right,
yes.
yeah, that's it. And this whole time, Hill is still at the corner somewhere, right?
He arrives at the scene, like I said earlier, approximately 11:33:17 is when he parks at the intersection.
That's what your opinion, that part's not in the critical time, that's your later on assessment, right?
I did observe it on a camera angle, but yes.
Did anybody ever interview Hill?
I don't recall.
Would it have been important for someone to ask Hill, why didn't you go to the school and why did you stop on a corner?
I can't answer that question. I wasn't involved in any of those interviews.
No, but I'm asking you, in your opinion, your training and experience, would it have been important for us to consider why Hill went to a corner when he's dispatched at 11:29:36, 3 minutes before this person even enters the building, why he went to a corner instead of to the school? Wouldn't that have been important to ask?
It would have been an important question to ask, along with why you responded to the school and your actions around your once you actually arrived at the school.
Yes, sir. But that wasn't done by anybody. It's not your fault. And that just wasn't done.
I don't know if he was not interviewed or was interviewed. I'm not sure.
That would have been important to put in here, right?
The timeline doesn't include every single event that occurred. You'd have to go to all of the investigative reports in order to get more details about those interviews.
Well, I'll represent you. We don't know why he went to that corner, okay?
All right, folks, let me go ahead and give you your lunch recess at this point. Take an hour, get back as quick as you can, and remember my instructions. We'll be in recess for 1 hour, which I get 1:35. Would everyone rise for the jury?
Okay, that was the moments there we were seeing. They've now gone to a bit of a break there in Texas on the trial of the former Uvalde police officer Adrian Gonzalez, who was on trial in a very rare case there for his actions or lack of response in which he's being accused of in terms of that deadly shooting that happened there in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School. That has been ongoing. It will literally still be going here now. You can see the big question is what will come out of this. Obviously, Gonzalez has pleaded not guilty to those 29 counts. And it would certainly set an interesting precedent. Again, the big criticism for a lot of the officers who responded that day is it took 77 minutes for them to engage with that gunman inside of Robb Elementary School. So we've been going in and out of that trial throughout the last several days, and we'll continue to do so until a verdict is reached. But right now, I do want to bring in Janet Roach. She is in Richmond, Virginia. We were telling you off the top here a few minutes ago that tomorrow is going to be a history-making day in the Commonwealth as Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger will officially be sworn in, becoming the first woman to serve in that position in the history of Virginia. Janet is in Richmond right now. She'll be there along with Layla Cox over the next 2 days, reporting on everything that is surrounding this event. And Janet, hello, good afternoon. Are you hearing any more of the activity that's happening around there as they get set up for tomorrow?
Well, it is a cold and calm Friday afternoon here, but there is a little bit of buzz of activity going on because just over to my left, and you can't see this, but I am looking at members of the Virginia National Guard. They are working on setting some things up. They will be firing a 19-gun salute tomorrow. They're also going to participate in the inaugural parade. So you do have some activity going on. And, we had some sound checks going on the stage behind me because that is where Abigail Spanberger will will make history tomorrow at noon. And then she says she wants to hit the ground running on affordability. She is excited about that. She knows it's going to be a challenge and there are no magic answers, but she is certainly going to try to do her best to bring down the cost of living for Virginians. She is making history and she is talking a little bit about that. She says she's excited. Listen to what she said when I asked her about how does it feel being the first woman governor of the Commonwealth.
It's exciting, it's interesting, and I think the way that I experience it, I think most deeply, is when I will have parents, even when I was campaigning, but certainly now since I've been the governor-elect, tell their kids, both their daughters and their sons, she's going to be the first woman governor. And I was at an event a number of weeks ago, and there were some teenage girls there. And one of the young women was so excited. She said, "Oh my goodness, you're going to be governor. You're going to be the first woman governor." And then she looked at me, she said, "And I'm," talking about herself, "and I'm going to be president."
Wow.
And so I think there's something really special about the fact that young girls, kids can sort of see that when somebody breaks one barrier, that there are many other barriers that they themselves then want to break. And so I think that's the exciting piece of it for me, is knowing, certainly not just being the first woman governor, but knowing that ideally there will be many, many, many to come in the years who will just do good work, and we might get to a place where it's just the governor.
Yeah, many, 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 many more to come. So yeah, making history, 74 governors of the Commonwealth of Virginia and down to 75 for the first female governor elected here in the state of Virginia. Now, making history 36 years ago. It was 36 years ago when Governor Doug Wilder was elected to be the 66th governor of Virginia, making history as the first African American elected as governor in the entire country. I sat down and I talked with him about that moment that he still thinks about. And check this out. He turns 95 years old tomorrow. How about that? So I asked him about that history that he made so many years ago.
What made you say now is the time for this history to be made when it came to your election as governor?
Well, I didn't look upon it as now is the time for history to be made. I looked upon it as the time as now is the time for me to be elected. Now, if that makes history, fine. But I felt it was time because I thought that there needed to be someone there who was familiar with. In the legislature, in the state senate, I was the first to be in that body since Reconstruction. But I was always reminded, had been mindful of, rather, of what my mother told me, and I mentioned that when I spoke, that I could be anything I wanted to be and do anything that I chose to do if I committed to it. And then when you look at people deep in philosophy have said, know you're right, then proceed. Now, what is your right? Then secure it. So my being elected wasn't like,
Go. Yeah, those were some very wise words he got from his mother so many years ago. Yeah, if you commit to it, you can do it. And 95 years old tomorrow. And here's something that I learned recently. I didn't know he painted. He paints. So this weekend, he's actually having an event where he's going to present some of his paintings and auction some of them off for a scholarship that he supports. So I thought that was pretty neat. So it was really nice talking to him. We're going to have more from the governor today at 4:30 and 5:30. But back here at the Capitol, folks are excited. Last minute preparations going on. And it's more than just the swearing in. The swearing in is at noon tomorrow. but then you're going to have the inaugural parade. Layla Cox will be covering that. A lot of local folks will be participating in that parade, including a lot of the mascots from the public universities down in Hampton Roads, CNU, NSU, ODU as well. They're participating. The Girl Scouts are going to be in the parade. Firefighters are going to be in the parade, as well as police officers. Just a lot of people. The theme for the inauguration is United for Virginia's Future. So that could mean a whole lot. It sounds good. We're going to have to wait and see what Abigail Spanberger can do. She knows she has a challenge before you, but she says she is up to the task. Eugene.
Janet, for you to be able to have that sit-down conversation with her, a lot of people who might be interested in watching that full interview, you can do that here on this platform, 13 News Now Plus. Again, that conversation that Janet had with Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger as of tomorrow will be the governor as well. Janet, can I ask you this? Obviously, you were able to talk with Governor Wilder and now soon-to-be Governor Abigail Spanberger. Between the two of them, what would you say, maybe, were there any similarities or things that stuck out that you said, they sound maybe alike in their conversation? Was there anything of that nature, particularly with both of them being first?
Governor Wilder. I don't think there's anyone who sounds like former Governor Wilder. So that's a kind of a difficult comparison. But I will say this, that, when I talk to him about the history that he's making, and when I talk to her about the history that she's making, you could tell that neither one of them wanted to really dwell on that. That it was more about the people. It was more about, what they hope to do for the state. So I would say that there was a little bit of a similarity there. They were both proud of what happened. I know Governor Wilder, he said something like what you just heard. He said it wasn't about him being the first black governor. It was about him being the right person to be elected at that time. And Abigail Spanberger feels the same way, being the right person to be elected to lead this state at the right time.
Interesting. I know that they don't want to dwell on it, but the fact is they both indeed are making and have made history. Janet, look forward to your reporting over the next 48 hours or so as you document history and talk to those who are a part of it. Again, that's Janet Roach. And for those who would like to watch the inauguration tomorrow, you can do so right here on 13 News Now Plus. We will have live team coverage on the streaming app starting at 11:30. There you have it right there with the inauguration of Abigail Spanberger here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Janet, thank you so much. We'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's transition to a few breaking items that have come into our studio here within the last few moments, both of them pivotal when it comes to Virginia and here in Hampton Roads. The first one I'm going to talk about, we just got this in from a federal judge in regards to the coastal energy wind project that is taking place here in Hampton Roads. It's one of those wind projects that was stopped by the Trump administration. We now know that a federal judge, as of the last hour or so, has ruled in favor of Dominion Energy, issuing a preliminary injunction in that case in which they challenged the Trump administration and their decision to freeze the offshore wind project. The lawsuit between Dominion Energy and the Trump administration was heard in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia right here in Norfolk today. Again, the Trump administration, as we have reported multiple times, froze 5 big offshore wind projects off the East Coast just days before Christmas, citing national security concerns. And among those projects was this one from Dominion Energy. Now, federal officials say that that pause was needed to kind of reassess those concerns that they say were flagged by the Pentagon. And though Dominion Energy, though, has maintained that it would be very, very bad, not only for the region, for its economy and the work that they've already been doing, saying that it is already so far into the project, stopping it now does not make sense. So that lawsuit now would be a victory for Dominion Energy. They sent us a statement as well. Let me see if I can pull this up from Dominion just a few moments ago. This is from a representative from Dominion Energy saying that while our legal challenge proceeds, we will continue seeking a durable resolution of this matter through cooperation with the federal government, saying that their team will now focus on safely restarting work to ensure that this project begins delivery of critical energy in just weeks. Okay, so that is the response that we've gotten from Dominion right after this has come through. Again, this project, by the way, will consist, this is coming from Dominion, 176 offshore wind energy turbines generating a lot of energy, 2.6 gigawatts, enough energy, they say, to power up more than 600,000 homes. It is a critical part of Dominion Energy's all of the above diverse energy supply strategy to meet the region's growing demand. And we have heard from bipartisan leaders here within the community saying that this is not something that they necessarily wanted to see. And so now, again, this federal court has paused or has stopped the freeze of that project for Dominion to resume their efforts there. And we'll see what happens from the Trump administration. I can't imagine that they will not appeal that decision, if not already doing so. The other big item that we have at the moment, this is coming out of our state capital there, where Janet is in Richmond. We just learned that Virginia voters will in fact decide whether to back a redrawn district map that favors Democrats in this battle to gain momentum and power in the U.S. House. This after the Senate today advanced a proposed constitutional amendment that would support a mid-decade congressional redistricting. Now, we had told you about this effort as well, as Democrats are now taking over all the chambers here in Virginia legislature. But this all ties into what we've seen in other parts of the country, right? In Texas, in California, in other portions of the country, where we first started in Texas with Republicans there changing their maps to gain at least 5 more seats potentially there for the GOP in the U.S. House at the direction of President Trump. In California, followed with its own change of maps where Democrats are looking to offset with their own 5 seats there. That is going forward to the voters in that community. And now you have Virginia also being amongst that mix, with Democrats here looking to get extra seats here in the Commonwealth. So that is major news. And now that will likely go to voters in a proposed map referendum, likely in April. Okay, so that's big news that has just come out of the Virginia Senate here in the Commonwealth. And Naya, I don't know, were we able to pull up the conversation from the Senate chambers there to see if we have the moments in which they were having that conversation? I don't know if we have that or not, but if we can try to pull it up at some point. But I do know we will have in studio at some point here this morning, we'll have Leslie Coggle, who will join us, one of our political experts, and she can talk to us about what this potentially means and the chances of those maps moving forward and voters potentially siding with Democrats or going against it. So we'll see what happens there. So big news in both of those situations coming out of the Commonwealth. Okay, next thing that I will kind of turn to here for the next few minutes. Earlier today, I was telling you about President Trump, who held a roundtable discussion on health care. That's another big topic that is impacting everyone here within the country. The president rolling out and calling for support of a health care plan that he calls the Great Health Care Plan. He joined other leaders in his administration, along with RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, and spoke for quite some time. We can listen to a little bit of that at the moment here and see what we can get from it if you missed it. Again, this was just earlier this morning, the president speaking in front of a room of people talking about his latest efforts to change healthcare and the healthcare system here within the country.
With you in charge, I have no doubt, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a really good man, a really brilliant guy, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Oz. And thank you also to Governor Jim Pillen, Senator Dan Sullivan, and Representatives Rob Bresnahan, Mike Lawler, John McGuire, and Nick Begich. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it very much. And we have other congressmen here, I see, and a couple of senators, and we appreciate everybody being here. Everyone wants to be a part of this. It's so important. It's maybe, I don't know, for many people, there's nothing more important. I would say maybe defense. We need defense, and we need offense too, by the way. As part of the great, big, beautiful bill, we're increased, and we have increased funding for the health care by an unprecedented $50 billion. That's rural health care. Nobody thought that was going to happen, and we got it done. So we have rural health care for those that were trying to make a case that we weren't taking care of the rural community. I'm all about the rural community. We won the rural communities by numbers that nobody's ever won them before, and we're taking care of those great people. So we already did this. We increased funding for rural health care by an unprecedented, record-setting $50 billion over 5 years, which will benefit Americans in all 50 states. And this made possible and was made possible by cutting massive waste, fraud, and abuse from Medicaid and reinvesting those funds to revitalize hospitals and our cherished rural communities and hospitals in rural communities. And I want to say, with all of the fraud that we're seeing in Minnesota and California and other places, I actually think that if we do an unbelievable job, you could almost balance your budget, Kevin. If you take a look at the kind of numbers you're talking about, nobody ever saw anything like it. They're all corrupt politicians, from the governor of Minnesota to the governor of California to everybody. They're just corrupt politicians. And you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud. Waste fraud and abuse, but in fraud, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. Under the Unaffordable Care Act, which is Obamacare, it's called the unaffordable. It is unaffordable, remember that. Rural hospitals and communities were devastated by soaring costs, and that continues. Despite colossal increases in government spending since Obamacare was passed, only 7% of the annual Medicaid spending on rural hospitals has gone to rural hospitals. So there's only a very little. They didn't care. Obama didn't care about the rural community, to be totally blunt. What he did care about is insurance companies. And this was a bill to make insurance companies wealthy. And they did. They made insurance companies very wealthy. I would say they don't like me too much because they spent hundreds of billions of dollars, and we're going to have that money spent to the people and given to the people. Not we're going to circumvent the insurance companies. Partially as a result, rural health care facilities have suffered from low occupancy rates, workforce shortages, and failing programs that put Band-Aids, literally put Band-Aids over the problems in those communities. And we're not going to have that. We're taking great care of them. With the Rural Health Transformation Program, we are getting rural communities the health support they need, and we're getting it immediately. These funds will go to empowering rural hospitals, strengthening their workforce, modernizing facilities and technology, and ensuring that rural Americans get world-class health care in their own community, right smack in their own community, like they've never had it before. And they've been hurt very badly by the Unaffordable Care Act. Every single Democrat in Congress voted against the lifeline for rural communities. And I hope everyone knows this, and this is not about elections, but I hope you remember this in the midterms, because the Democrats are just so horrible toward the rural community. But I want to take a moment to thank the incredible House and Senate Republicans who worked so hard on making this historic investment possible. That's what they did, and they did work hard. I don't think, got a Democrat vote, did we? Did we get one Democrat vote? We got all Republican votes. It was an amazing feat, and I want to thank Mike, our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and John Thune for really doing a great job. It was tough. You know, we have small majorities, and I want to thank the congressmen that are here for doing, in particular, for working so hard and getting this done. Yesterday, I also announced our framework to lower health care prices for all Americans, including those in rural America, and we're calling it the Great Health Care Plan. You know, we had to come up with a name, and everybody wanted to say, oh, well, can we put something about lowering costs, because we're lowering costs very substantially. So I had Bobby, and I had Oz, we had everybody in there. We had a whole group of people who were trying to come up with, so we're saying, the cost reduction plan that gives you good health care. And I said, it's too long, it's not going to sell. I said, we had more plans. And they wanted to get the words cost reduction in there, Lola, especially you. They wanted cost reduction in, and then they wanted great health care in. I said, look, you can have one or the other, but it gets too long. We're talking about the name of a plan. So we got it down to 7 or 8 words, and which is far too long. Nobody can remember that much. And I said, how about just call it, because this is the Great Health Care Plan. Now, a great plan has to be cost-effective, otherwise it can't be a great plan. That's the way I looked at it. So we have a very glamorous name. It's called the Great Health Care Plan, not the...
Okay, that was from earlier today with President Trump holding a roundtable discussion there on his health care plan, in which he is pushing for members of Congress to support. But right now, what I would like for us to do, I just told you prior to us going to that conversation that Virginia lawmakers in the Senate have pushed forward a newly drawn map that will now go to voters in the Commonwealth. This being a map that is favorable to Democrats, that would change the way things are in the U.S. House. It's a part of that entire conversation and efforts across multiple states to kind of seat grab in the U.S. House at this moment. So we have pulled up the actual stream from the Virginia senators that just wrapped up not long ago. This is a part of that vote discussion. So we're going to press play. At this point, you will see Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears, and I do believe she then calls on the senator out of Hampton, Mamie Locke, at that point. So let's start it there.
Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President and colleagues, I would ask that you reject this amendment to House Joint Resolution 2. As stated yesterday, this is designed to torpedo the process and prevent the amendment from moving forward. And for those reasons, I ask that you reject it.
The question is, shall the McDougall floor amendments be accepted? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The floor amendments are rejected. Senator Rouse, the junior senator from Virginia Beach.
Thank you, Madam President. As Chair of Privileges and Elections, I believe the senator from Hampton has the identical Senate version of House J2, so I'll yield the floor to the senator from Hampton.
Again, the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that HJ2 be agreed to, and speaking to that.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President and colleagues. I present to you House Joint Resolution 2, which is not new to you or those who are here in person or virtually. We've heard it before. House Joint Resolution 2 is the second reference to a constitutional amendment addressing the qualification of voters, the right to vote, and who is entitled to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This amendment provides that every person who meets the qualification of voters set forth in the Constitution of Virginia shall have the fundamental right to vote in the Commonwealth, and that such right shall not be abridged by law. During a period of incarceration for a felony conviction, a person cannot vote. However, as stipulated by this amendment, upon release from incarceration for that felony conviction, without any further action being required, that individual will be invested with all political rights, including the right to vote. This amendment also provides that a person who has been adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction as having the capacity to understand the act of voting as prescribed by law is also entitled to vote. Madam President, if I might, let me explain what this amendment is not about. It is not about election interference or restitution, lack of voter ID laws, or 45 days of early voting. All of this we've heard as reasons for not to support the amendment. This amendment does not negate one having to pay restitution. Let's address the reality of Virginia being an outlier with restoration of voting rights and ignoring voting as a fundamental right of democracy. Taking away a person's right to vote who has been convicted of a felony has never been about punishing people who committed a crime. It was and remains an overt and intended effort to block Black people from voting. If that is in doubt, just read the debates at the 1902 Constitutional Convention. The delegates' avowed goal was to purify the ballot, and felony disenfranchisement was proven to be their most impactful method then, and it continued to be a proven method of keeping folks away from the ballot box. When felony disenfranchisement was incorporated in the post-Reconstruction 1902 Constitution, alongside poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses, it was just one tool designed to stop as many Black people from voting as possible. Black codes ensured that a disproportionate number of Black people would be criminalized and felonized. It is beyond dispute that felony disenfranchisement was and is as Jim Crow as poll taxes. In the post-civil rights era, it remains a vestige of Jim Crow that lingers. The question we should be asking ourselves is, why are we talking about giving something back that should never have been taken away in the first place? The right to vote is an essential currency of democracy. Withholding it from hundreds of thousands of Virginians makes a mockery of any pretense that we are a commonwealth seeking to right past wrongs and make reparation for past injustices. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy, yet there is no guaranteed right to vote in the Virginia Constitution. The right to vote should not be subject to the whims of the government and should not be taken away for any reason. It is time we made clear that the right to vote is basic to citizenship, the main building block of civic life, and it belongs to the people, not the government they elect. Permanently taking away the right to vote for people convicted of felonies started in the Jim Crow era as a way to keep Black people from voting. It's a racist policy that still haunts Virginia today, as 1 in 7 Black people in Virginia can't vote because of felony disenfranchisement. Attorney and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, Brian Stevenson, once said that each of us is more than the worst thing we have ever done. Yet we continue to punish people forever, despite them having paid their debt to society. Taking responsibility and paying one's debt to society while some have not for their actions warrants passage of this amendment. The Virginia General Assembly should pass a constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right to vote for every citizen and Virginia resident over the age of 18. And with that explanation, Madam President, I ask that we support SJ2 and agree to the amendment.
Senator Suderline, the senator from Roanoke.
Madam President, if I may speak briefly.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate our senator from Hampton, our chair of rules, passionate speech. Just a few things to provide some perspective on. The 1902 Constitution was terrible. I think I've criticized that a whole lot of times, but this predates that. This is something that has been around since the very early of the Republic. Well, we were still experiencing several of the terrible things with slavery and also outright voter suppression that prevented folks of Black folks from being allowed to register to vote or participate. And so the only folks that were affected by this would have been white males. And it was done so at the time because it was believed that if someone commits a serious enough crime, they should not be allowed to participate in this until, restitution has been made. That's why there was a process in the governor. We all seem to agree that it should not be automatic that you get all your rights restored. There's nothing in this bill that says you receive your rights back to firearm ownership, because we all seem to agree that perhaps we should be deliberate in that process. And so I appreciate the passion. I think that Governor McDonald did a great job on this issue and bringing a lot of folks back into political participation through his reforms. I think that Governor Northam and Governor McAuliffe continued that, sometimes I think in ways that were not as deliberate. And I appreciate those efforts, though. And so I would just wish to speak to that, Madam President. I want to make it very clear that when we say we want to restore folks to full citizenship, I don't see anything in here that restores the firearm ownership. And I think it's because we all agree that that's something that should be deliberate. And I think that's why this has been here since early in the Republic. Thank you, Madam President.
Again, the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Madam President, this is not about passion. This is about someone who was a victim of voter suppression, just simply because I'm an African American. But I do believe I stated that the amendment stipulates, upon release from incarceration for felony conviction without any further action being required, an individual will be invested with all political rights, including the right to vote. And with that, Madam President, I ask that the amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall House Joint Resolution 2 be agreed to? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. House Joint Resolution 2 is agreed to.
House Joint Resolution 3.
And there you have it. We wanted to show you the moment that that vote went through, and that was just within the last 20 minutes or so. And as I said here just a few moments ago, that voters in Virginia will now decide if they agree with a change in its congressional maps here, mid-decade, so earlier than what it typically is supposed to. This is a part of that national fight now to gain momentum and gain power in the U.S. House, right? And so a big step that's taking place here in Virginia. You saw the numbers there, 21-18 was the vote. That is right down party lines. So when we're having this broader conversation, do elections matter? Clearly, in this case, it shows that it matters, and that, you can argue, is the reason why you're seeing Republicans and Democrats across the country trying to do this in their own states. And so to talk more about this, talk about timing, we had already planned for her to be here. We have Dr. Leslie Coggle, our political expert from Virginia Wesleyan, here with us right now. And I was talking to you while we were listening to that. And first thing that jumps out to me is that Democrats clearly in Virginia are not wasting any time trying to get their agenda across.
Yeah, it is very clear that they see an opportunity to shore up some of the things that have caused them concern, particularly as they've not held some parts of the Virginia state government in the past. So I think you see them really quickly acting on the things that they think are most important and trying to codify them. Again, not just as kind of passing a law, but codifying it in the Virginia state constitution. So there is a very clear list of priorities here, and they're seriously going after these things. They're kind of not dipping their toe in the water or going slowly or trying to be bipartisan as they begin this assembly session.
Yeah, I mean, even when you look at that was the Senate, you heard the senator from Hampton, Mamie Locke, speaking to, from her perspective, why this matters right now. The House, which again put forth Don Scott, who's right here from Hampton Roads 2, as Speaker of the House. They put through their agenda earlier the week. They passed those through pretty quickly as well. All of this, as we are still a day away from Abigail Spanberger being officially placed into the governorship here. Leslie, what does that kind of tell you and what we can expect as they do officially take control of all three chambers of government here? How quickly we should see some of the things, and what do you think will be first amongst their agenda?
I think you should really expect to see all of these things that Democrats have made a priority in their campaign being a real quick focus of legislative action. We know we've already had debate on issues related to an amendment that would codify reproductive rights in Virginia, would essentially kind of codify protection for gay marriage, negating an earlier Virginia law that prohibited it. So I think you're seeing a lot of focus on many of these social issues. I imagine once Spanberger gets into office, however, you're also going to see her really reinforcing a lot of the economic and affordability issues she made a cornerstone of her campaign. So certainly if you look at some of the things that have been introduced in the House of Delegates, you see various ways that they're trying to shore up the healthcare system, especially as I think most people understand some of the cuts that came from national legislation to kind of disproportionately affect rural areas, of which we have a lot, particularly in South and Western Virginia. So I think you're going to see a lot of movement on those sorts of things. And again, Democrats are hitting the ground running. They are taking this very seriously. I think they see a window of opportunity and they're moving forward into it.
And you mentioned it already, but 4 landmark, really key things that they're looking at right now. We're talking about changing the congressional maps, but you also have reproductive health rights, along with marriage equality and voting rights as well there. And the steps for this, and reminding people, yes, the lawmakers now have decided that this will move forward, but the voters of Virginia still will have their final say in this as well.
Yes, all 4 of these amendments that they're pushing through will go on the ballot. So they're going to have to make this pitch to Virginia voters. And in particular, I think this amendment about redistricting is going to have to go on the ballot in April. So that means I think you're going to see a media campaign. You're going to see candidates talking about this and trying to persuade voters of this right away. And that's always particularly interesting to me in the context we find ourselves, because 5 years ago, this same process led Virginia voters to say, we'd like a less political redistricting. So I find it interesting that as Democrats are pushing this through, they've kind of carved out some parameters around it, right? There's a sunset on this law. It's only triggered if another state redraws maps mid-cycle without a court order. You see them messing with the federal maps, but not the state legislative district map. So there are ways in which I think they're trying to make it clear to voters that their perception is they're responding to the political environment, and this isn't just a blatant power grab. But I think that's going to be a tough sell to some voters, particularly because some of these maps we're talking about would redraw what is, I believe, a 6-5 congressional delegation to 10-1 or 9-2. So we're talking about a lot of seats that were competitive not being quite as competitive in the near future.
And there are people who believe that one of those seats that will be impacted are in our area here with the 2nd District, which is currently held by Congresswoman Jen Kiggins. I know there are challengers in that seat, including former Congresswoman Elaine Luria. In that, I want to read something that the Senator Ghazala Hashmi, who of course is going to become the next lieutenant governor, also here just within a matter of hours now, she sent in an email with her response saying, unprecedented attacks on our rights and our families require that my colleagues and I enact constitutional protections to secure the right to marry, the right to vote, the right to reproductive health care, and the right to protect citizens' voices in the federal government. These amendments send a powerful message that Virginia chooses freedom over fear, equality over exclusion, and democracy over manipulation, marking it, saying that it's her final actions as a state senator before she is sworn in as lieutenant governor. And that kind of speaks to what you were just saying, Leslie. They are arguing that this is in response to what we've seen, not just in other states, but really what we're seeing just a few miles north in Washington, D.C. And that's kind of my next question to you. The last kind of conversation that the governor, current governor, Governor Youngkin, left us with in his address, he called for Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger to continue working with the Trump administration for the betterment of Virginia. I'm paraphrasing what he was saying there. But I'm very curious what that looks like when you have a Democratic legislature here in Virginia now, and you have what we see in the Trump administration in Washington, D.C. How do those two sides work together when it appears a lot of what they are pushing right now do not align?
You know, I have to be honest, I'm not sure I understand the nature of that argument in the context of Virginia, because part of what I think is presupposed by that is the Trump administration agenda includes some things where you could carve out bipartisan support. And my read of the situation is a lot of the things that the Youngkin administration was kind of cooperating on, I don't know if they were cooperating on as much as they were just silent about or managing the implications for the state of Virginia. So I'm thinking the DOJ cuts, which disproportionately hit states like Virginia and Maryland. I don't think you saw Governor Youngkin out there being like, yeah, let's cut government. This is good for Virginia. I think what you saw them doing was, trying to create job placement programs and the like, or make the argument that Virginia policies were bringing businesses in and Virginians would have kind of job options outside of government. So for Spanberger coming in, as long as the Trump administration seems to be placing things as priority, like immigration enforcement in the way it is, moving environmental regulation standards in ways that some people perceive to be harmful to the interests of Virginia, I think it's going to be harder for her to act in coordination with the federal government, in part because I don't think the Trump administration is interested in coalition building across lines of political difference right now. I think what they're interested in doing is riling up their base before what is really likely to be a contentious midterm campaign, should nothing change. So as long as we're talking about invading Greenland and things like that, for Spanberger, I don't know that there's much political value in appearing to coordinate with the administration. I think probably the best she can do if what she wants to do is not target administration ire, is just to stay quiet on a lot of the things that the administration is doing. But I think for a lot of Democrats, particularly in this political moment, that might be unacceptable. So bipartisan kind of cooperation for her, even though that's something that she clearly believes in, has campaigned on, it's a tough thing to achieve right now.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking, you said, would she stay silent in ways, you think about the way that she campaigned, you think about what we've heard from other Democratic lawmakers here within Virginia, and you look at the actions that we're seeing right away from now Democratic-led House and Senate. Something tells me that's not going to be their strategy here, and what they would think would be the best not only for them but for the state. So I'm really curious, as you are, to see how that all plays a role, because in reality, we've had this conversation, you've come on, and others, those cuts that you mentioned by DOJ and some of the other policies, you could very much so draw a line to the Democratic push that they had in November. I mean, and so what the Trump administration in D.C. seemingly does, because it so far has impacted Virginia so much, it had an impact on our elections, and it will continue to have an impact here no matter what they do, you can imagine, on Virginia.
Yeah, and I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that elections are different when President Trump is on the ballot than when he's not, and that's part of what we saw last November. The people who are likely going to be part of the voting coalitions that come out next November are going to be the people that are incredibly dissatisfied with the current administration or somewhat dissatisfied. But President Trump draws in a lot of voters who don't consistently vote for anybody other than him. And I think what that means is for the president, like, you're doing your best to place yourself at the center of the election and try to get your supporters out. But for Spanberger and Democrats in Virginia, that means the election is even more about perceiving, or people perceiving you to be an adversary of a president that they find unpopular at a point in time where they're likely agitated and likely to turn out to vote.
Yeah, just it's so interesting to look at. You got a Republican-controlled Washington, D.C. at the federal level, and now a Democratic-controlled Virginia here right next to each other. It's going to be fascinating to see how all of that is navigated. Speaking of fascinating, I would imagine one of the things that we're going to be talking about a lot here over the next 24 hours is the historical point of tomorrow, right? No matter what side of the coin you sit, Republican or Democratic, we knew that a woman was going to be the next governor of Virginia. It turned out the person who won was Abigail Spanberger. Leslie, I want to ask you now in the context of that. She's, I don't want to say downplaying, but we had Janet Roach, who was in Richmond for the next few days. She'll be covering all this. She spoke with Spanberger. She's really not trying to oversell, the fact that she is the first woman to be in this role, but you can't ignore it because it is history in the making. What do you kind of make of, how she's handling that conversation and particularly the historical context of it too?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
So let me first say, I think it's wise the way she's handling this, because we know that a lot of voters find explicit calls to identity politics unappealing, particularly more moderate or independent voters. And calling attention to the fact that somebody who looks like you has never sat in the seat sometimes can undermine people's perception of your competence, right? So it makes sense to me that she's not talking more about this. Personally, though, as somebody who's interested in Virginia politics and thinking about how politics has changed so much, not just in the past 250 years, but in the past 50 years, it is really telling that in Virginia, we had a choice between an African-American female candidate and kind of another female candidate running on the same ticket. In fact, this ticket, at least at the state level for state level offices, it was pretty heavily populated by female candidates, certainly relative to what it had been in the past. And I think what that really indicates to me that is positive is that more people with different backgrounds and different understandings of politics have thrown their hat into the political arena. And I like to see this in both parties because I think there's data to support this. You get better policy when you have more perspectives that go into shaping that policy. But this is a really big deal. Virginia is one of the oldest states, and we are one of the handful of states that's never had a female governor. So, I will certainly be feeling pride for Virginia, and was after we got through primary elections last year, just in looking at the diversity of this ticket, with the note that diversity doesn't always mean that, people were given a position because of, or even often means because of their race, right? These were really qualified candidates who ran good campaigns and rose up in that way in this process, right? So we ended up with a really diverse and competent, I think, legislative slate.
Yeah, we were talking about it leading up into it when we looked at each side of the coin. Just there were so many firsts. There were so many people who represented different segments of our communities. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at all of the state elections in the history of the United States, but I would imagine it had to be, if not the more diverse tickets that we've seen in history. I mean, certainly here, obviously in Virginia, but when you looked at it from top to bottom, I think it was you and I. We had that conversation. Yeah. It was such a solid reflection of where politics and where the communities have come to see all of those various individuals on both sides of the aisle kind of represented there in a statewide ticket. It was pretty amazing to see.
It really was. And it always speaks to me that it's not just a reflection of where our politics is, but all of a sudden our state legislature and our state government looks a lot more like what Virginia looks like in terms of religious diversity in terms of kind of gender orientation, gender diversity itself. So I think we're looking at a legislature that's a much better reflection of Virginia, at least demographically.
So we were talking about what Democrats are now going to be trying to push here really quickly as they come into the fold. Well, actually, I don't know. Did we touch on how they were even able to do today? I don't know if we may have glossed over that real quickly. Context for it all. The reason why they were able to do this, again, the speed back in October, they immediately pushed that through after they came in. And so I wanted to make sure we mentioned that real quickly. How we even came to this point is because they were able to get things pushed through so quickly when they came in October.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of contention around the idea that this this could go through in this way, whether or not this amendment had been introduced after an election had started, because early voting had already started. So we got into these legal disputes about what election day meant, right? Was it when voting begins? Was it kind of on the first Tuesday in November when people could actually kind of vote en masse in person? That was the day. And some of this has been kind of adjudicated through the courts. But I think certainly for Republicans, there's a sense here that maybe this wasn't fair play, right? This was rushed through and pushed down in a way that rests on a lot of maybe mushy assumptions about kind of what the law requires here.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people understood that, because everything has kind of built on each other. Just has been so quick. You can argue it's been pretty quick how things have happened, but I can also argue a lot has happened since October. So a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks here. What do you think, Leslie, is going to be Spanberger's maybe toughest challenge being in office as governor? Obviously, she starts off with a good deck of cards with both Democrats leading the House and the Senate. But do you foresee any challenges that she might face in her first stint here in office?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two buckets of things that I think are going to be really challenging to the governor, or maybe at least I perceive to be most challenging right now. The first is that we know Americans feel like economically, by and large, they're not doing well, or not doing kind of as well as they'd like to be or as they were. You see economists predicting ways in which that might kind of worsen rather than improve, given the status quo. Certainly to the extent that the big, beautiful bill cuts to Medicaid occur, there are parts of Virginia that are particularly vulnerable to that. So she has all of those challenges kind of coming in. And there are challenges that are really hard for a governor to address, right? So I think certainly you're thinking about ways that you can kind of tangibly point to things that improve the lives of Virginians that are kind of within your control to do. And that's going to be really hard, but it's going to be especially important to her and the party because she was so successful in campaigning on kind of questions of economic flourishing and affordability. The second thing that I wonder about as we're moving forward, I mean, Spanberger is a moderate politician, right? And she doesn't live on the far left of the progressive spectrum. And I think you're going to see a lot of push from Democrats who think we've got all three kind of seats in the Virginia kind of legislature. We hold the governorship, we hold the state senate, we hold the House. Now is our opportunity to push what we want through. And I think if you're the one sitting at the head of that, the fear is always, how far can we push before we go too far and create a backlash? So I think managing her own coalition might end up being something that takes a significant amount of time. How do we keep the Democrats' focus on things that are popular or will be popular among voters, as opposed to pushing things that might not play well for us either in the midterm elections or in the next kind of election at the state level, because she doesn't want to be, I am sure, governor over a divided House, right? You'd like to have an easier time getting through your agenda, and that means doing everything you can to keep the party as strong as possible, not just herself in a strong position.
You mentioned, the affordability conversation. We're kind of seeing that at the national level right now, right? President Trump really campaigned over, prices, grocery prices, everyday things that Americans feel in their wallets. And then he got into office, and here we are literally almost a year later, and affordability is still at the very top of concern for a lot of people in the country. And so to your point there, it's one thing to say it prior to in the the campaign process, But then to actually implement that, there are a lot of factors that come into play. Now, we can argue on the Trump administration side, people are saying, well, tariffs and those kind of things too, or policies that are put in place. But it really is, harder to do, I think, than people realize to immediately see that impact. And you wonder how patient voters will be.
Yeah, and just typically voters are not very patient. No. And I would note that presidents of both parties run into this problem when they campaign on the economy. Presidents can do things, but a lot of those things to see the effects of, we're talking about maybe 10 years down the road, right? Economies move slowly, and we're not entirely sure what moves them in any direction, and you can't control economic headwinds, right? Everything was going well until we had a global pandemic. So there are a lot of things beyond presidential control. I always find it fascinating how similarly presidencies respond to these questions. I think you see President Trump laying out a message that's very similar to the one that was unsuccessful for President Biden, which is it's actually going better than you think it's going. Let me tell you why. And I think that's just a reflection of how hard it is in that position to tangibly improve the economy in ways that the voters can immediately see or understand based on their circumstances.
And speaking of that, linking both together, we kind of touched on this, but the midterms will be a huge indication on where we are. I know we're still now almost 11 plus months away from that, or less than 11 months away from it. But particularly when you see what's happening now in Virginia, we see what's happening in Cali and Texas and others. And we see the discourse that's happening even within, about President Trump and the administration. It's an early prediction, but how do you think things will go come November for the midterms here with all of the changes potentially that could be happening to the House seats, but just in general, who has the momentum right now? It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is when you're making bets on this stuff, it's almost always a good bet to say the party out of power has the advantage in an election, because it's way easier to say this is what's wrong as opposed to fixing what's wrong. So, and Americans, when we vote, we tend to have a kind of throw the bums out mentality. That means in off-year elections, you usually see the president's party, they lose some seats. And currently, if we look at opinion polling, if we acknowledge the reality that President Trump brings voters in who seem to not show up in off-year elections, I think, it doesn't look like it's going to be an easy election to run as a Republican. And that's even putting a pin in whether or not Virginia draws new maps that make it even harder. I would say, money in elections is always something we see a lot of, particularly in Virginia. But the fact that Virginia is the last Southern state with protections for abortion access, I think means that you're going to see a lot of special interest money around reproductive freedom and abortion restriction, right, from the pro-life movement. That money is going to flow in. And I think about when Aaron Rouse ran for his seat in a special election in kind of the Virginia Beach area to replace Jen Kagan's, I believe, a ton of money came from kind of pro-reproductive rights groups into his campaign because they kind of looked at Virginia as a battleground for that. So I think Virginia is likely to be a reflection of the national environment in the sense that if the economy's not going well, if the president is unpopular, you're going to have those headwinds. But I think there are also some other issues that are going to be really specific to Virginia, like the abortion issue, that are going to make this campaign really interesting, really costly, and in the current environment, you would imagine really difficult for Republican incumbents.
Yeah, I'm so curious what's going to happen, not just because of how voters will feel, but also, again, in the context of what we just talked about that has now happened in Virginia and in Texas and in California, which just earlier this week, by the way, I should probably mention in California, a judge, three-judge panel there in that area denied a request from state Republicans in California and the Justice Department to block the maps that overwhelmingly were passed there in the state for the next midterms. And again, 5 seats that they're hoping to get there, the offset in Texas. And so that's the part. I'm just trying to see how these chess pieces are going to go, because ultimately we're talking about the changing of maps. People still have to vote. Yeah. And that really is the thing. Yes, you can, kind of change the maps to lean a certain way, but at the end of the day, people have to still show up and vote. And so we'll see what happens there. Again, we are joined by Dr. Leslie Coggle, our political expert, Virginia Wesleyan University. And let me ask you this, too. There's a lot happening on an international scale. Is there anything for you that has been particularly in your eyesight that you're like, man, I have a lot of questions here?
I am really, really intrigued right now by what I think is a potential split in the current Republican coalition between kind of MAGA, President Trump-aligned Republicans and those I perceive to be more America First, anti-interventionist Republicans, as we see an administration that looks like a little bit more hawkish and neoconservative than many would have anticipated it being. So threats to intervene in Iran, our actions in Venezuela, questions about Greenland. And, you know, you can point to things like retirements and Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of resigning her seat early. All of these things, I think, do point us to a way where I think the president is trying some of the coalition of people he's put together. And I'll be curious to see how that resolves itself, right? And how much pushback he gets from people who are anti-interventionist and kind of the spend America's money on America, not elsewhere. As, quite frankly, most presidents in their second term take a more foreign policy-oriented kind of focus to the agenda. President Trump is doing that very much. In fact, it's only in the past few weeks, particularly after the November elections in places like Virginia, that we saw the president start to do rallies again, talking about economics and affordability. So I'll be really curious as to that inter-party kind of shuffling and that inter-party dispute when it comes to ideologically, what does the Republican Party now look like? And in particular, what does the post-Trump Republican Party look like?
Yeah, and to think, I mean, there's still so much has happened in a year. You know, we have not quite hit a year, and I'm sure the Trump administration would point and tout that very highly, that they have done a lot. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who can argue that nothing has happened here within the United States, both domestically and internationally, and in some ways, in ways in which I don't think people were expecting to, regardless if you voted against or for the president. There have been a mix of surprises that have happened even here within the last month.
Yes, certainly. And I think the president and some of the decisions he's made and the things that he's chosen to do has, upset assumptions about what his government would look like. And I have to say, I think you really saw that after, we had military troops essentially remove Maduro and kind of bring him here for trial. There were a lot of Democrats that were like, oh, I don't know what to say about this because I didn't like that regime, right? And there was definitely a sense that maybe we'll stay quiet and see how this turns out because, he's playing around outside of, I think, what the coalitions expected him to do. And I think, I guess we'll see what the ramifications of that are for the political parties, but it definitely means it's harder to navigate for them, at least both electorally, and harder for them to think about what policy is going to look like in the near future.
Yeah, every day there's something different. I mean, if you would have asked me if the Venezuelan opposition leader would be personally hand-delivering the Nobel Peace Prize to President Trump on my bingo card, I probably wouldn't have put a chip down at that point. But Leslie, anything else? I want to just kind of throw it up to you. Is there anything else you feel like our viewers right now should be paying attention to politically, either here in Virginia or across the country at this point? And anything else you think, hey, you really kind of see how this goes forward?
I think we're all thinking about and paying attention to what's happening in Minneapolis. And, just one of the realities of the big, beautiful bill that I don't think got enough attention was how dramatically the funding was increased for immigrations and customs enforcement. And one of the realities you see on the ground in Minneapolis is like ICE officers dramatically outnumber Minneapolis police officers. This strikes me as a really volatile situation, and you hope kind of nothing else terrible happens. But certainly how politicians at the national, the state, and the local level manage what is a powder keg is something that I'm kind of sadly looking at right now. And I think we should all be paying attention to just in terms of kind of evaluating how our governments perceive their power and their responsibility right now.
Yeah, certainly. And it was yesterday that we were on this stream, and that is when the president had posted on his True Social account that he was threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act, right? And to your point, we know that there's at least at this point 2,000 plus ICE officers and agents there on the ground in Minneapolis for what Homeland Security is calling its largest operation for immigration crackdown that the department has ever had. It'll certainly be interesting because at every juncture here, you're seeing state and city leaders disagreeing with federal leaders, even on what they see. And so I'm with you. That's been very fascinating because you wonder how the two sides are going to come together, if at all. And in the meantime, how long will it take before we see tensions kind of rising there on the ground amongst the residents there in Minneapolis?
Yeah, and let me just say, too, this entire situation really makes me concerned for a further erosion of trust in government and accountability in a society in which our trust in government and institutions is already really low. And just kind of as you're looking at the different portrayals of what's happening, people interpreting visual evidence in dramatically different ways, quite frankly, statements from DHS that have turned out to be inaccurate after the fact. And just, all of this, I think, really creates a situation in which I think Americans, at least some segment of Americans, feel like they're not being protected by the federal government, but like the federal government is a threat to them. And this is so incredibly dangerous, and it's so incredibly sad. It really reflects a difference in how things have worked in the past. We've usually, I can't think of anybody, Republican or Democrat, when you've had something like this happen, where everybody isn't on the same page in the sense that priority one is de-escalation. And I guess I worry as we're looking at this that priority one for everybody is not de-escalation.
I think that's a really good way to put that for right now. And you hope that at some point de-escalation will take place there in Minneapolis, which every time we look at something that takes place in one city, we always have to think, as we saw in just months ago where things are happening in Chicago and then they were happening in Charlotte and elsewhere. You never know when it could potentially something could rise up where you are. And so you want to make sure that you're monitoring what's happening across the country. But, tomorrow, let's go ahead and put up that slate there again. Leslie, we're all going to be watching history here in Virginia, where we will have the inauguration of Abigail Spanberger, who will become the first woman to become governor here in the Commonwealth's history. That all kicks off tomorrow. We will have live coverage from 11:30 here on 13 News Now Plus, where you can watch the inauguration and the parade and all of the celebrations live here on our social media platform. And so, Leslie, we always love that you come in and speak with us and give context. And we weren't expecting for some of this breaking news to happen right before you walked in, but thank you for joining with us and helping us kind of get the context that we needed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do this right now, Naya, real quick, because I do believe they have come back into the courtroom there in Texas. We will take you live to the trial of that former Uvalde police officer there, Adrian Gonzalez, as more people are testifying on the stand. Right now it appears that they're answering questions about the perimeter of Robb Elementary. Remember, the big question here right now is, did police and officers who showed up to that scene do enough? Did they act soon enough? And what were some of the things in their training? What were some of the things that they were seeing and experienced that may have dictated what they did? And so let's go ahead and listen in to the individual who is currently on the stand as both the prosecution and the defense make their terms.
Pixel view of because we've seen the funeral home videos. The jury's seen them. You're talking about that. You're looking at the same videos that this jury has seen, right? Yes. Okay. And that's not a direct angle. It's a very odd angle, and they're not focused on the parking lot of the school, correct?
It's the parking lot is captured in the angle.
But I understand that. But the purpose of the funeral home putting up their camera wasn't so they can look at the parking lot of the school, right?
I don't know what the purpose was.
Some common sense. They're probably focused on the security of their own establishment, right?
I would say that was the most important, yes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. They're not focused on the school. You're picking up part of the school, but they're not focused on the school, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so that's what you're talking about, because we've seen that video where the shooter is walking calmly, and then you see him just get lost in between cars.
He gets, I think you can tell that he's actually walking between these two cars, and then you lose sight. You cannot track the shooter here.
Yeah, but see, you can't track him, but you automatically start curving up this way when you can't track him, right?
I know the gunshots he fires from this general location. I can see the gas and
Shells.
smoke, not the cartridge casings, but the smoke coming from the rifle.
Okay.
And as the plume of smoke rises up, it's on.
What would be the evidence of that gas and smoke actually being there from that pixel big camera?
You can see it.
What would be the evidence of that? Let's say that there's different opinions on what you think is that smoke from that very odd angle way over here. What would be the evidence to substantiate and back that up? What would you look at?
There was nothing else there that could have caused that plume of smoke.
Okay, what evidence would you show? Would it be spent shell casings, right?
I would show the video from Hillcrest, no.
Yeah, but it's in evidence. We can look at it again. I'm just saying, but the evidence to support that, there's shell casings here, right?
They're fire cartridge casings, yes.
Right. So empty shell casings, right? They're empty? Okay. And the jury is seeing where they're at, and they're placed where they were. And you understand how firearms work, right?
Yes.
Semi-automatics?
Yes.
Whether it's a handgun or whether it's a rifle, it ejects to the right.
To the right, slightly to the back.
Okay, fair enough. But and depending on how you're holding, whether you're moving, what you're doing, there could be different factors on how far that projectile goes and where it ends up landing. But we can get an idea, correct?
Correct.
If somebody shoots a weapon, and it's assumed that I'm shooting a weapon this way, I'm not going to just. The shell doesn't just go. It doesn't drop straight down.
Generally, no.
Yeah, I mean it gets trajected. It's right ejection.
Out to the right and slightly to the rear.
I understand. Yes, sir. I understand that. But I mean, it's this way. It's not here.
Correct.
So when you follow spent shell casings, you know that you don't place the shooter where the shell casing is.
Correct.
Right. There's somewhere to the left of it.
Yes.
And depending, and there's people that have different opinions on that, whether it's 1 foot or up to 15 feet. But there's a huge range of where someone can be, right?
I wouldn't say a huge range.
Well,
it's going to be within reason.
Well, 2 to 15 feet on extreme sides.
I would say closer to 10 feet max.
Okay, in your opinion?
In my experience.
I understand, but there's other people with different experience that may say 15. So 10 to 15 at max, to be fair, and 2 to 4 to be minimal. Is that a range? Can we work with that? So if we have shell casings here, then in your opinion, 10 feet, other people's opinion could be 15, but for sure somewhere between 2 to 4, up to 15, 10 to 15 feet, the shooter is to the left.
Yes, it also depends on the surface and whether
Exactly.
the cartridge casings land in grass
or cement
or on concrete.
Yes, sir.
Or pavement.
Yes, sir. And we see that. There is some concrete there as well, right?
Yeah, it's some type of a mixture.
All I'm saying is there's a lot of factors is my point.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's what you're talking about, the opportunity, right? You're talking about seeing it. So I want to make sure I'm understanding this. You're saying that Adrian over here, I'm trying to recreate this. So Adrian over here, behind the building, parked over there, would see this puff of smoke, maybe, and could say, that's someone shooting, so I have a better opportunity than Sergeant Coronado, Officer Mendoza, and Officer Saucedo that have line of sight of this guy. I want to make sure I understand you. That's what you're telling this jury?
Can I clarify something?
Absolutely, sure.
So the plume, can I stand up here?
You may.
So the plume of smoke that I observed on the surveillance camera around here were going to be with the first shot that the shooter fired when he arrived here. Adrian,
say that one more time, I'm sorry.
So the plume of smoke that I saw in this general area, that would be associated with close to probably the first shot that the shooter fired here, and Mr. Gonzalez had not driven by him yet.
But you're saying probably, right? You're saying so. Can I go by what you're? Can we just take your fact as the probably that may be true?
What are you referring to with probably?
You said probably. I'm not saying that.
No, The plume of smoke right here that is associated most likely with the first shot.
Most likely is a probably, right?
Well, the plume of smoke is noticeable right after the shooter fires his first shot in this area.
But you can't say for sure what that is, right? You're just saying it can be associated.
I can't tell you for certain
Yes, sir.
that it's going to be the gases expelling from his rifle. However, there's nothing else here that would cause that same
And from your investigation, where was Mr. Gonzalez when that happened?
At this point, he had not even arrived yet.
So you're surely not telling this jury that you want to hold him accountable for a shot that he didn't see, right?
I never did.
Well, but remember, you can have a seat now if you don't mind. But remember my first question before we went through this exercise? I said, who had the better opportunity and ability? And I said, these three officers with line of sight and with the long rifle had it better, and you said, I disagree, and I asked you, what did you mean? And we've just gone through this exercise right now.
Can I explain myself?
Sure you can.
Can I stand back up there? So when these shots were fired right here, Mr. Gonzalez had not arrived. The three officers at the intersection had not arrived. Mr. Gonzalez had driven past and had parked up here. The 14 seconds that passed, he gets out. When he gets on the radio and says shots fired, he has now clarified.
He heard something.
He understands that shots are being fired because he put it out over the radio.
But can I stop you there so we can go step by step? But before that, it was dispatched that there were shots fired, right?
Dispatch did say that.
Okay, so I mean, he just finally heard them himself, and now he's saying, I'm at location and I'm hearing shots fired, and they're trained to report what they hear, see, perceive. That's part of your observation, so he's doing what his training tells him to do, right?
So he perceives and hears shots being fired, and then gets on the radio and broadcasts that.
I don't think that's contested. I think that you look so, but you're saying that shows that he has a better opportunity than people that saw the shooter?
So at this point, once he's here and once the shots along 102 and in 104, once those shots start happening, these officers haven't arrived yet.
Okay.
They're not in a position. They don't have the opportunity.
Okay.
Here, a possible opportunity is, because you have cover on this building, in this area right here, even with a handgun, an officer can come down here to gather additional information, and this is the opportunity that was available to the first officer, Mr. Gonzalez.
For 22 seconds before Mendoza showed up, right?
Well, the two opportunities are independent.
But let's go one thing at a time. So you're saying that you believe that Mr. Gonzalez, Adrian, had a better opportunity or a different opportunity than because shots were fired, and although he didn't see it, he heard them, right?
He acknowledged he did, yes.
Well, sure. Is there a special class in either TCO training, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement? Every officer in Texas has a TCO license, correct?
Yes.
Anything in the academy of the Texas Rangers that distinguishes shots fired and you say, where'd that happen? That's on the northwest side. I didn't have to see it because I can tell. That's on the southeast side. Is there special training to get your ears to be able to tell not just where shots are fired, but then when there's echoing involved? Because you know about echoing, right?
I do.
Okay. So is there special training for that?
There's firearms experience that we have.
That wasn't my training. Yeah, so there's no special training. Is there a special type of ear, a gift from God, that gives somebody that special ability to tell, can you do this? Can you do what you're expecting Adrian to do?
Not that I'm aware of.
So you can't do something that you expect this jury to hold Adrian responsible for. Is that a fair statement?
Well, are we talking about what I would possibly do?
Well, I'm happy to talk to you about that, but I know you didn't come to testify about that. I asked you something specific about your ability, about your ears. You're trying to hold Adrian, it seems like, responsible for something that you've admitted to this jury that you can't do.
No, I can hear shots.
I know that, but do you know where they're coming from?
I'm going to find them.
That's not what my question was. I mean, because when you hear a shot, you're admitting that you don't know where they're from, right? So you're saying that there should be something.
I'm not admitting I don't know where they're from. I'd have to hear the shots in order to be able to make that determination.
So I want to make sure that jury understands you, because I'm not sure I do. So you're telling this jury that you can be somewhere, forget about the stress factors, they're called human factors, right?
Right.
Let's just set aside human factors for a second. That you can be in a situation and someone can shoot a shot, we can put a blindfold on you to make sure to test your abilities. Bah, bah, and you can say, that is on the northwest side of me. You're saying you can do that?
I have to hear the shot in order to be able to.
But you should know if you can do this or not. Can you do that?
I can. There have been many times where I have been able to accurately find the location of where shots were coming from.
So you heard a shot and you knew where it was coming from. You heard a shot and you said, that's on the northwest side of me. That's on the southeast side of you. You did that? You've done that before?
I have, yes.
How many times?
I would say a handful of times in my career.
And have you done it with echoing off a bill? I don't know if anybody believes you. With all
Objection to
respect,
sidebar comment.
I'll move on.
Sustained.
He's right. I sustain myself, Judge. You're right. And so, you're telling this jury that you have that ability. Do you?
Objection is repetitive now, Your Honor.
Let me finish my question first.
All right, finish the question.
Thank you, Judge. So you have that ability.
It's on a fired shot by fired shot basis.
Okay, fair
yes,
enough.
I have been able to accurately determine where shots were originated.
Now let's take it a step further. Have you used this unique ability to tell where shots are coming from once they echo off buildings? That's the second side. That's part of my question.
I have heard echo from shots, yes.
Okay, I understand. So have I. A lot of people have. But now we're taking it a step further. We're testing your ability. So you're saying you can hear shots, know where they're coming from. You said you can do that. Amazing. And number two, now you're saying that you can hear shots echoing off a building and you can still tell where they're coming from. That's what you're saying?
I can't comment on that unless I hear the actual shot.
I'm asking if you've done that before. Have you done that before? Have you heard shots echoing off a building and being able to determine where they're coming from? Have you done that before? Yes or no?
The shots echoing off the building from the shots striking the building or the sound echo?
The sound, sir. Or both. Because there's an echo, right? When shots are fired near a building or at a building or around a building, there's an echoing effect, right?
If you're outside and there's no hearing issues or no major obstructions, when there is an echo present, in my experience, the first shot's always been the loudest, and then the echo is more muffled.
That wasn't my question, but I understand that. My question was, you have heard shots fired around buildings or at buildings, and even though the shot makes an echoing off that building, you have the ability to tell where it's coming from. That's my question.
I have accurately determined the location of fired rounds with echoes involved.
You're the first. That's amazing. Okay. And so that's what you're saying now. You're saying that 23 seconds before Mendoza shows up, and then 2 seconds later, Salcedo shows up with the long rifle, and then 3 seconds later, Coronado shows up. You're saying this 20-something seconds when Adrian gets there is dealing with a frantic person, hears shots fired. He doesn't have your special ability, so he radios it in and says, shots fired. And you're saying that's the opportunity that you say he could have had to know where this shooter is at? Is that what you're saying?
He had approximately 50 seconds from the time he parked to the time the shooter entered the west door.
That wasn't my question, though, because you were making a distinction between the time before Mendoza shows up, because that 50 seconds includes these three guys over here with long rifle, right?
The portion of it does, yes.
Yeah, so you were talking about this portion when Adrian was by himself, right?
Not in that area where
Yes.
he was parked.
Okay. Remember my first question. And I thought it was simple. I was saying Coronado, Salcedo, and Mendoza here had a better opportunity and more ability to engage, distract, deter, stop the shooter than Adrian Gonzalez did without line of sight. And you said, no, I disagree. So now we've been doing this back and forth, correct?
The reason I disagree is because before Mendoza, Salcedo, and Coronado can't take action if they're not there.
I know, and that's why I was talking about this 23 seconds, and now you're going to 50 seconds.
Well, because they're too independent.
I understand that. Do you understand my questions?
Do you understand my answer?
I've asked you questions first. Do you understand my questions?
I do understand your question.
And my original question, let's start again. We can start again. I'm going to start again. Coronado, Mendoza, and Salcedo being here with line of sight with 3 officers on the same side as the shooter, you're saying do not have a better opportunity or ability than Adrian Gonzalez that never had line of sight, did not have a long rifle, was dealing with a frantic person, a witness, maybe a victim he didn't know at first. You're saying that he had a better opportunity than them?
Objection repetitive, Your Honor. We've gone through this 3 or 4 times.
Judge.
Okay, you can answer, then we're going to move on. Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Rephrase your question.
Just answer the question and we'll move forward, okay? Coronado, Saucedo, and Mendoza. On the same side as the shooter. The shooter's on the west side, right? Yes. Okay. Same side, with line of sight possibilities, with a long rifle. Do they have a better opportunity and ability than Adrian Gonzalez? No. They do not. Okay. So, with that being said, I mean, I think that says everything, but if that being said, so you're saying, so these guys here, he's shooting at the building, and there's an echoing. Do you believe that there was an echoing going on?
Yes, for some shots, yes.
Okay. And they believe that they were undertaking fire, right? They believe they were.
Yes.
And you would agree that there's no defects behind them?
Yes, correct.
And there's no defects on their vehicles?
Correct.
There's no defects from skipping on the pavement, right? Because they can show some defects on the pavement, correct?
Okay, you were just listening in live to that trial that is still underway there in Texas from the Uvalde mass shooting at Robb Elementary School. It is 2:59 now, so it is officially the time for us to wrap up this live stream on Live Impact News. Naya, we hit on a lot today.
Yes, today was very busy.
Very, very busy.
But very informative.
I will say this again, hopefully, if you're in the area of Norfolk or Hampton Roads, you can come out to the Norfolk Admirals game tonight at the Scope Arena. I'll be there. Naya says she has a ticket. Hopefully she'll be there too. But we know that our 13 News Now meteorologist will be there. The entire team, they're going to be participating in STEM night with so many different activities. You'll be able to see them on the ice, off the ice, talk to them, interact. So please come on out. That is tonight. Puck drop starts at 7:05 at the Scope Arena. Okay, with that, we are done. Thanks for watching us, not only on our app, but also on YouTube. Next up, will be at 4 o'clock, I do believe. We'll have 13 News Now at 4. I'll be there, but we'll be back for Live Impact News next week, 10 a.m.